As the story goes, between 1880 and the 1940s, the Lamarck University was thriving with both the children of wealthy locals and the children of colonial residents. In the 1940s, the university was closed, mothballed and stood still in time. A number of the buildings were lost, and all of it fell into disrepair. Luckily, some groups saw the potential and commissioned the world-famous architect Bill Bensley to return the site to its former glory. This time in the form of Quoc's most elegant international five-star hotel, the J.W. Marriott Quoc Emerald Bay. Classrooms were turned to guest rooms, offices into public areas, and the old Mushroom Ecology Wharf into the amazing Chanterelle Spa. On top of all that, the great-great-great-grandson of Lamarck University's first dean was enticed back to take on the role as our new dean. There is much to learn about this site, so join us on our journey back to a mythical place and time where we will be going on a special tour step by step, department by department. As the story goes, Lamarck University was the intellectual and educational pinnacle of Quoc Island. The Bay of Baikem was first inhabited in the late 1700s, almost 100 years before the university opened, and you can still find the buildings from this time as you walk down the Rue de Lamarck. As the population grew, a small school was built on the site. It grew slowly until the time of colonization, when a boost in the population of wealthy families created the need for further education. In the 1890s, when the French began its expansion, the university specialized in natural studies, with the departments of agriculture, zoology, and botany being established first. These studies mirrored the loves of the French naturalist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. As he was one of the most prominent scholars of this period, using his name in an honorary title was well received. After a number of years, the university increased its portfolio of studies. The departments of chemistry and architecture were built at the far end of the Rue de Lamarck. The departments of zoology, agriculture, and botany increased in size as smaller departments developed behind them and along the beachfront. Welcome to our bell desk area. As the story goes, this part of the university was built in 1904, and the design features a number of quirky nods to bells. On top of the bell desk, we see original service bells from France, along with larger hanging bells and heavier bells set into the desk itself. In total, there are 45 different bells in this area. As we look behind the bell desk, we see some of the original secretary drawers still with the numbers on. these were where the student library cards were kept. On top of the drawers, we meet one of our first characters, Robert de la Manèse. Monsieur Lamanèse was a French Catholic priest, philosopher, and political theorist. Other original pieces which can be found in Dean's Library area are the French gymnastics equipment, dating from the early 1900s. Today, these are used as casual furniture. One of the most successful parts of Lamarck University was their numerous sports teams. The mascot for these teams since 1917 was the Quoc Ridgeback, which we can see inlaid into the floor in the bell area. The student body would be heard encouraging the teams with the cry of "Ridgebacks rule" during the matches. The most famous success of the Ridgeback sports teams was their 1929 success in the Champion of Champions, where they won the Asian Rugby Championship. This giant trophy for this event has stood proudly ever since and is now a water feature created by the University Din 10 years later in 1939. Before we reach the reception area, we can see the walls adorned with some of the items found left in the university when it abruptly closed in 1940. In the first frame, we see some of the sports items found. Early-style tennis rackets, which still use wire. Football boots date to the early 1900s, as well as some team photos from some of the Ridgeback teams. In the next few frames, we find some of the personal belongings of one of the students who was at the university in 1907 and 1908. The bowler hat he wore when playing croquet and his end-of-year photographs are still in great condition today. As we arrive further into the century-old Dean's Library, we can see how it was a perfect fit for a luxury hotel reception. Tall ceilings, huge amounts of light, and collections of great antiquaries are all waiting for our guests to explore. By the concierge desk, there is a display of trophies won by the Ridgebacks. However, it is estimated that this is only a small percentage of the total trophies won, as they were found amongst the rubble. Stored in this part of the reception hall, we can find stacks of the luggage which have been left behind by the students and staff. They were expecting to return shortly after the summer break, but due to conscription in Europe, some students, alas, never returned. Some of these suitcases are more than 200 years old. In the far corner of the reception hall, we find an area dedicated to the Department of Animal Husbandry, an offshoot to the Department of Agriculture. Many old books and ledgers can still be found on the shelves today, albeit a little bit dusty. The remastered lobby hall has a bright and modern feel. It contrasts perfectly against the antiquary. The books and globes, which are hundreds of years old. One item which you will see a lot of in the reception area are the presses used to publish the professor's works. Even, although many years ago, it appears that to be a successful teacher, you had to publish or perish. Images of some of these professors can still be seen around the reception. Pierre Leroux was a professor of botany. Gaspard Monge was a mathematician, whilst Victor Grenard and André-Louis Debian were chemists. However, the most important bust in place was that of the first dean of Lamarck University, Dean Ty Matthew Collins. As the story goes, his leadership and prose was what enabled this remote university to compete on so many levels. And thus, Sun Group was determined that his great-great-great-grandson would be here to hold the reins today. The resemblance between them is truly uncanny. The legacy continues. To reach the Rue de Lamarck from the reception hall, we must take a walk down the Lamarck University's Hall of Fame for visiting teams. Here we can see those teams which were left defeated by the Lamarck Ridgebacks and then had to leave their jackets behind in forfeit. Many left other items as well, such as these. As we head on to Rue de Lamarck, the heart of our hotel, we can see the beautifully converted aged buildings containing our Chanterelle spa, gift shops, and food and beverage outlets. The shopkeepers would have lived above their storefronts, and today these former shophouses have been turned into a series of suites offered at the resort. You can see the natural evolution of the street clearly. The small buildings are only outdated by the original entry gate to Baikem, which still stands today, beautifully restored but showing off its original design in all its glory. Around the gates or roofs of the walkway will remind you of the Japanese covered bridge in Hoi An. In fact, the whole street has the same feel as some of Hoi An's famous walking streets, which makes sense considering both locations were being inhabited at the same time. These buildings were the first arcade-style buildings on this site, allowing visitors to shelter from wind, rain, or the sunshine. You could even say this style was the first step towards the modern-day mall. One of the most impressive transformations at our resort is the building that now houses our spa Chanterelle. As legend goes, this used to be the Department of Mycology, where the agriculture students learned how to grow multitudes of mushrooms for eating, making tea, and perhaps general experimenting. During the university years, this room would have been in near total darkness, damp with a pungent smell. The difference now is astonishing, with an open, bright interior which is pleasing to all senses. However, we can still see numerous nods to the building's past, with mushrooms portrayed in the design and in the artwork covering the ceilings and the walls. We can also see the old botanist cabinet, which was used to store various samples of dried mushrooms. However, one room has stayed the same. During the university years, the professor of mycology, Mr. Champignon Rouge, lived above his beloved mushrooms. He designed his quarters to remind him of his chateau in the Loire Valley back in France, with heavy beams and angled ceilings. Next, we will take a quick look at the retail outlets currently open on our famous Rue de Lamarck. First, we have Kai Silk. This silkery is well known for its excellent quality silks, woven into fashionable items for both men and women. On the opposite side, you will find the Lotus Art Gallery. The dedication of the proprietors of the Lotus Art Gallery is to discover and introduce new talented artists in Vietnam by promoting traditional and contemporary Vietnamese fine arts to the world. Beside the Lotus Art Gallery, we find another traditional art, the famous Hoi An lantern. In this shop, you are able to purchase and make the beautiful lanterns. The Hoi An lantern has become an iconic Vietnamese symbol and is synonymous with the ancient town near Da Nang, which hosts the Lantern Festival at every Tet. We anticipate that our lantern shop on Rue de Lamarck will create lanterns of even better quality. Next, along the Rue de Lamarck, you will find our Department of Physical Education, which is open 24 hours a day for our more active guests. Inside and around the physical education department, you will see many more original items, such as this original croquet set, which is more than 150 years old. Croquet will be one of the games organized by our recreation team at our stadium and is famously the only sport to ever appear in just one Olympic Games, as apparently only 6 people turned up to watch the final. The first F&B outlet we come to in the resort is our French and Co restaurant. This outlet has a relaxed vibe and specializes in pastries and coffee. The dozens of scales which you can see in the outlet have been recovered from the old department of patisserie, which stood in the same location during the time the university was open. The most stunning piece recovered, though, is the weighted iron oven, which stands masterfully in the open area, contributing to the beautiful smells. Our talented bakers make good use of the oven on a daily basis. As we edge towards the end of the Rue de Lamarck, we can see how it opens up. In the 1800s, this was full of wooden buildings, but they have burnt down. The dean at this time took the opportunity to redevelop this area with the development of the departments of chemistry and architecture, and the first dean's house, which is now known as Pink Pearl, was extended. During the era of the university's first dean, the Pink Pearl building was known merely as the dean's house and stood in a gravely grey color. The dean's second wife, Pearl, was Vietnamese and had learned the fine art of Cantonese cooking from her grandmother, who was an immigrant from Hong Kong. Pearl was known throughout Quoc as the grand hostess of the island. She threw the best parties, and the elite of society always waited anxiously for their invitations. Pearl was so well loved by the students and faculty that, after the passing of her husband, Pearl was allowed to remain living in the house until her death many years later. She had such a joie de vivre that people began referring to her as the Pink Pearl. So it wasn't long before people stopped calling it the Dean's House and renamed it Pink Pearl. Today it has been reimagined into a 3-story restaurant which will serve fine dining seafood. But the name Pink Pearl, along with the joy of its former resident, remains. Tempus fugit, which means time flies in Latin, was a department of architecture when the university was functioning. We can still see some of the graduated students' architecture models near the ceiling, showing their respect and recognition from the next generation. As their story goes, many of the famous architects of the time, such as Gustave Eiffel, came to talk at the university. His visit is memorialized in each tabletop that now contains a reproduction of his drawings of the Eiffel Tower. On the ceiling we can see the exposed light bulbs, which were a must-have in the 19th century for any place of importance, as they were used to show off the owner's wealth and nobility. Just like now, the placement of the light bulbs was used as a design as well as for adding light. Around the rest of the building we can see a wide range of rulers, protractors, and other architectural instruments used in the design of the building. As we enter the 2 private dining rooms, we can see many amazing photographs of sites around Vietnam. Previously there had been paintings here, but they didn't survive, and they thus have been returned in photographic form. These were taken by Mervyn Reeves, a British photographer, and some of the photographs took weeks to take as he waited for perfect conditions. the Department of Architecture used to attract some of the wackiest individuals. The Department of Chemistry was a marvel at the time of the university. As the story goes, the students of this major were able to create dazzling displays of chemical reactions which wowed the rest of the campus. With the periodic table painted onto the ceiling and the elements scattered throughout the room, along with an oversized atom swirling around its nucleus envisioned in the main chandelier, it was only fitting to turn this into the beautiful bar it is today. Despite being a bar, you will still feel like you're in a scientific lab due to the beakers and the test tubes and other experimental glassware which decorates the open bar area. As we look around our ballroom, we have to imagine stepping back into time when it used to be the school's auditorium, where the students were gathered to listen to their lecturers and the visiting professors. It was said that there were over 40 visiting professors who came to speak at the university. On the wall we can also see a huge number of the original chairs which were found in the rubble before the room was renovated into what is today one of the most beautifully stunning ballrooms in all of Vietnam. Here we can also see the original front door which was incorporated into the modernization. At times the ballroom and its surrounding areas, such as the foyer, feel more like a museum due to the huge amounts of original pieces. This brings us to the Room of Bad Inventions. Here you will find the original blueprints from a French auto enthusiast who was designing six-wheeled vehicles. His ideas never got off the ground. As the story goes, the backstage area, which is now one of our 5 breakout rooms, is named for Lamarck's grandson, Elliot Gaylord Lamarck. Elliot was an actor, and the room contains costumes from his career. There are house ledgers on display, which are ledgers he kept of his house before selling it. He used the money from the sale of his house to finance the journey of the world to find himself. So, that concludes our history lesson of Lamarck University. Now go out and explore. See for yourself why the J.W. Marriott Quoc Emerald Bay is such a one-of-a-kind, truly fantastical place.